Emily from the Energy Boutique with your energy forecast for Tuesday, August 31st. So welcome to the very last day of August. We are wrapping up some serious life lessons here today, some serious August lessons that have been very overwhelming. It's been very uncomfortable. There's a lot of information coming in that we are still processing because there's some huge shifts in our realities, changing the scope of what is possible and what it is that we will actually be manifesting. We spend the very last day of August with the moon in Gemini, transiting into Cancer, although it will not be moving and locking into Cancer energy until early Wednesday morning. The moon will go void, of course, around supper time, 5:49 p.m., again, Atlantic Standard Time, where honestly, we become a little bit sleepy. Our minds are kind of losing its pizzazz. We're losing our focus. We're losing our energy. We can count on the bulk of the morning into early afternoon being very active, especially in our mental planes, very busy in our day-to-day lives, lots of tasks, lots of chores, lots of social situations emerging. And then, like I said, after supper time, we're kind of losing steam. We're kind of just wanting to zone out. We are moving from the mental plane into the heart space when the moon moves into Cancer. So we have 11 different aspects taking place here today, 9 of them involving the moon, and we're still in the releasing stage of manifesting, meaning we're still sorting through the information, the details, the realizations, and we are kind of cutting away what isn't working, what isn't applicable, what doesn't really matter, to focus on the facts. Again, we're in Virgo season. That's what we care about, the facts. It is what it is. What are we going to do with it? That's where our focus needs to be. So the moon goes ahead and trines Venus in Libra, very first aspect of the day. And this is really going to put a lot of focus on our relationships, on our new wants, on our new needs, on our new values of what we find and deem to be worthy. This has to do with our happiness and joy levels, of what it is we love to do that brings us a sense of joy, and also who it is that we love that brings us a sense of joy. We've been struggling with our relationship factors because a lot of the dreams, a lot of the visions that we have for ourselves, we're now recognizing are kind of being blocked by some of our relationships. And because we're working hard to kind of reestablish, rebalance the energy exchange in our personal relationships, there's some tweaking that needs to be done. The moon in Gemini, though, especially teamed up with Venus in Libra, this is a very positive aspect. We're thinking loving thoughts. We're thinking about our relationships in the most positive light. We're finding the peace in the chaos. We're a little bit more affectionate, especially with how it is that we're communicating with our personal people. We're finding a lot of balance in a place that at one point, even 2 days ago, was so out of balance and so hella crazy that we didn't know how we were ever going to get out of it. We're finding a lot of peace in the moment. We're finding a lot of joy even in the smaller things. And because there's a lot going on in our mental planes, our narrative is much more soft, much more pleasurable, much more encouraging than it has previously been. This is a beautiful time and opportunity for the moon in Gemini to go ahead and bump into Pluto. Pluto, of course, illuminates our shadow selves, the fear, the pain, the trauma, all those yucky parts that we compartmentalize and push way down inside of ourselves. We recognize now that we've been fearful to speak out. We've been insecure in some of our relationships. We've been kind of attached to holding ourselves back in all the best kinds of ways for fear of rejection, fear of repeating past pain and trauma patterns. And this realization, especially because we're kind of all up in the lovey-dovey vibes of it all, this is a huge emotional transformation where there's a lot of healing that takes place, not only in our heart space, not only in our mental plane, but in our physical relationships. We're having huge amounts of insight into the inner workings of our memories, the inner workings of how it is that we are looking at ourselves as an individual, as a part of a relationship. We are also looking at, very favorably, our wants, needs, and desires for intimacy, for connection, for growth. This is a huge shift that takes place inside of us. We kind of recognize at this point that we've been missing out on a lot because of the fear of not having our feelings reciprocated, not feeling valued, not feeling worthy by the people that we have been pouring into. And when we recognize where it is we've been in a state of paralysis and we break those walls down and communicate more effectively and share our heart space more easily and fluidly, we find that the heaviness, the weight, the pain, the trauma that we've been holding on in our unconscious bodies, of course, replicating physical manifestations in our physical bodies, gets released. It starts moving around. The energy seems to be lighter and a little bit more fluid. At this particular point, though, the sun in Virgo makes an aspect with Saturn, who of course is retrograde in Aquarius. This is a tension point, but it provides us with a beautiful opportunity to have an aha moment of learning. This is essentially where it is that we're illuminated to our mental patterns, to our emotional patterns, to our pain patterns, and where it is that we boss up to take control. Of course, Saturn, being the Lord of Karma, usually comes down on us a little bit hard, a little bit tough. But this is actually a positive pep talk that Saturn is kind of giving us right now, because we're at a choice point where we need to boss up, to move on, to make some changes, or we need to shut up and stay in a situation that does not feel good, that does not feel favorable, that, we choose to stand in because it's old, because it's kind of predictable, because it's familiar. But we're choosing to be better. We know better now. We have more information. We have more wisdom. We've shared our emotions. We've shared our thoughts. We've shared our vision, and we're getting good feedback. And this is very encouraging for us to boss up, to be positive, to be confident, to take control over our actions. Of course, now that our mind, body, and soul are all on the same page, wanting to advance, wanting to push forward, wanting to make some changes. So the moon in Gemini squares Mars, who is in Virgo. This is a clash, if you will, because Mars wants to take action. He is moving towards the latter degrees of Virgo, so there is a lot more force. There's a lot more aggression here because we've taken the time to think about things. We've sorted through the information. We've processed the different perspectives. We know our options. We know the decisions. And now we've taken the time to get our heart and our head on the same page. And now we're willing to take an action to replicate that. Yes, a square is a tension point, but again, a tension point is usually what has to happen for us to be uncomfortable enough to make a move. So at this particular point, we might be moody, we might be irritable, we might be frustrated, but that is the fuel that we need in order to take action, make a move, to take the next step in our plans, in the process, to step into the new path that we 100% have taken the time to think about, to feel about, and that we're in agreement with. Mercury, who is now in Libra, makes his first aspect while in Libra energy with Jupiter. This is a beautiful energy because Jupiter, of course, wants us to grow, wants us to expand, wants us to be positive, wants us to be confident. Mercury, who does rule over the mental plane, now in Libra, who is only seeking balance, peace, and harmony in all of our thoughts, all of our conversations, is pushing the boundaries in our mental plane. We're expanding the mind. We're stepping outside of the comfort zones, our blinders, if you will, that Mercury had on with Virgo. Why? Because in Virgo energy, we have to focus in on the small details. Now we have the information, we've sorted through it, we've processed it. Now Libra, this Libran energy, wants us to see both sides of the coin, wants to see the pros and the cons, wants to sort things out in a balanced way so that we can come up with a middle point, a grounding point of where it is that we feel safe, secure, balanced, and reassured. This Jupiter energy magnifies everything. And because we're confident, because we're fired up, because we have done the thinking process needed in order to get our heart and our head on the same page, now we're pushing our mental plane. We're pushing our minds. We're pushing the new ideas. We're pushing the new vision, the new dreams that we're having. We're really allowing our mental plane to float off into space to grab a brand new vision of what could be. This is a beautiful energy. It makes us feel big, powerful, grand. Yes, it does put a lot of pressure on our mental plane, but the pressure has shifted. It's not as weighted. It's not as intense. It's very light, very airy, very kind of inquisitive. We want to talk about it. We want to be social about it. We want to share our thoughts and ideas. We want to push the boundaries of our thinking. The moon goes ahead and squares Neptune, and this is really going to apply a lot of intuition to the logical and practical thoughts that now we're kind of pushing our boundaries in. Neptune energy does have the potential to make us hypersensitive. Of course, we are attached to everything. We are picking up on subtle energies all around us, and it can become a little bit overwhelming. It can come to the point where we just want to escape our physical realms, where we want to float off into space, where we want to live in the imaginary land of the dream and of the vision that we're working to manifest. And because, the previous aspect of Mercury in Libra kind of being challenged by Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius to push the boundaries of thinking, to push us into new ideas and visions, we kind of get lost in it. And it's not a bad thing to get lost in it, but we have to make sure we come back down to earth. We come back down to reality. We have to consider the fact that Neptune in Pisces is always sitting across from the sun in Virgo. Virgo and Pisces are on opposite axis in the cosmic wheel. And we have to understand that the sun is illuminating where it is that we need to focus on the details, but we can't be so practical in our linear, practical, logical thinking that we forget to check in with our dreams, with our imagination, with our intuition. The moon is going to bump into Saturn, and this is really going to help us gain a lot of perspective on where it is that we are merging our higher selves, our intuitional selves, with the practical egoic avatar that our physical bodies are. Now, this may create a little bit of a negative narrative in us because Saturn's job is to remind us of the roles, of the responsibilities. He's here to remind us, have you learned that lesson? Are you mature enough to go on to the next chapter? Are you aware that maybe you're biting off more than you can chew? He does have a tendency to put a little bit of a damper on things. And at this particular point in time, because we kind of, we're flying high with our dreams, with our imagination, with our intuition, with that Neptune aspect, Saturn brings us back down to earth. He gives us a reality check. Now, it's not a bad thing. We just have to watch that we don't spiral too far into the fears and insecurities, into the nervousness, the anxiousness that Saturn is here to remind us of. We have to keep in perspective our physical realities are changing at a very rapid and accelerated rate. And with that comes a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity that we're being tested on right now, on whether we can hold the vibration high, on whether we can find peace, harmony, and balance in the chaos, and whether or not we are going to allow the negative narrative to override what we know needs to stay high vibe, very positive, very optimistic. The moon goes ahead and bumps into Chiron, and this is a beautiful energy after coming back down to earth and getting that reality check from Saturn, because it provides us with a little bit of insight on where it is that our fears are still very much alive, trying to keep us in holding pattern, on where it is that our indecisiveness is keeping in a state of paralysis, and where we can focus in on the emotional blockages that are preventing us from taking the next step. Now, it might not feel good to have these realizations where it is that we are continuing to block our progress, but as soon as we can acknowledge it, as soon as we become aware of it, we have the opportunity to shift it. And what we are going to do with this particular aspect is to challenge the narrative, challenge the emotions, challenge the blockages. And just when we think that we're running out of steam and that we don't have the strength or the determination to overcome yet another set of emotional obstacles and blocks, the moon goes ahead and jumps into Plutonian energy. What does Plutonian energy do? It provides us with an inner transformation on the most unconscious levels. The Plutonian energy wants to highlight our fears, our insecurities, which likely we've been illuminated to with Saturn's little pep talk and then Chiron's huge flashlight in our emotional blockages, where it is that we're blocking ourselves from being able to move forward. And when the moon kind of jumps into this Plutonian energy, there's a huge learning opportunity. There's a huge opportunity to use the pain, the fear, the trauma, the insecurity, the uncertainty as the fuel to the fire that we need to push through this last little set of emotional blockages. It's a perfect opportunity for the moon in Gemini to trine Jupiter. Jupiter, of course, is our greatest cheerleader. He wants to show us the big dream, the big vision that we're working towards, and he wants to give us a pep talk. This is instilling in us the confidence that we need, the optimism that we need. We're attaching to our higher selves. We're recognizing where the pain patterns are trying to keep us in a lower vibration and frequency. And Jupiter wants us to push past that. He wants us to grow and expand our minds, our narratives, our vision, our thinking past this low level vibrational frequency of fear, pain, and trauma. We get a huge opportunity to basically step into our higher selves here, because the moon goes ahead and makes a beautiful aspect with the sun, who is in Virgo. This is beautiful because Mercury rules over the Gemini energy that the moon is in, and also rules over the Virgo energy that the sun is in. This is a huge shift in our thinking, our perspective, in our narrative. We get to boss up from the old narrative, see where it was blocking us, and rewrite the script into something more encouraging and supportive. We get to move out of illogical, reactive emotions and step into practical emotions that are going to kind of push us in the right direction of progress. So, anytime we have the sun and the moon at each other, like they're opposites, right? The sun is the masculine energy pushing for action, illuminating where it is that change is needed, where it is we have to pour our energy into. And of course, the moon is the feminine energy, where it is that emotions and visions and transformation is concerned. So you best believe that when these two come together, there is a merging of the division between our heart and our head. It's a beautiful thing. It's setting us up for a very powerful shift in energies, especially where our thoughts, our ideas, and our visions are concerned.